Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Today we're journeying to Japan.
But maybe not to the Japan you'd expect.
We're used to hearing about bullet trains and robots, right?
Right.
But this time it's about rice crackers and steel.
Industries grappling with change in a country that's been remarkably consistent for decades.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
Japan, a country with a rich history and deeply ingrained traditions, is now facing a demographic shift that's forcing its oldest businesses to adapt or disappear.
Exactly.
Our listeners sent in this New York Times article about how shrinking and aging populations.
Particularly in rural areas, are creating some serious labor shortages.
So we're diving into how companies that have been around for a century.
Or even more, are navigating these choppy waters.
It's a story of resilience, resourcefulness.
And a touch of cultural intrigue, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Let's start with Hizatsuki Confectionery, a family-run business that's been making rice crackers since 1923.
That's over 100 years of tradition.
Imagine the changes they've seen.
The article really highlights the dilemma faced by the company's president, Takeo Hizatsuki.
He needs workers.
But bringing in foreign employees represents a huge cultural shift.
It's one thing to recognize the problem,
But quite another to actually implement a solution.
especially when it involves challenging deeply held norms.
So how did he approach this?
Well, he didn't just dip his toes in the water.
He dove right in.
He started by hiring foreign workers and then put real effort into making them feel welcome and integrated.
He set up language support at the factory so he could communicate with them directly.
That's huge.
He's not just relying on translators.
He's making a personal effort to bridge the communication gap,
Right.
and he's backing it up with concrete actions.
For instance, he ensures that his foreign and Japanese workers receive equal wage increases every year.
This is a big deal because it challenges the traditional seniority-based system prevalent in many Japanese companies.
Wow. Talk about putting your money where your mouth is.
He's not just paying lip service to equality,
He's baking it into the company structure.
but it gets even more interesting.
It does, doesn't it?
He's also stated his intention to promote a non-Japanese worker to a management position in the next few years.
This is practically unheard of in a culture where climbing the corporate ladder has always been intertwined with seniority.
And let's be frank, often Japanese ethnicity.
That's a bold move.
And it speaks volumes about his commitment to creating a truly inclusive workplace.
It makes you wonder if this is the beginning of a ripple effect in Japanese corporate culture. It's like he's laying the foundation for a whole new way of doing business in Japan. It's really inspiring to see.
But Hizatsuki Confectionery isn't the only company adapting to these demographic shifts.
The article also mentions Daiwa Steel Tube Industries.
They're tackling this challenge in a really interesting way, too.
What's fascinating about Daiwa Steel is that they're looking beyond just filling immediate job vacancies.
Their approach is much more holistic.
They're actively encouraging foreign employees to bring their families to Japan.
It's like they're creating a community within a company.
Do you think that's a more sustainable model in the long run?
It certainly has the potential to be.
See, Japan has struggled with what's called a brain drain,
Foreign workers would come for a few years, gain experience.
but then often leave, taking their skills and knowledge with them.
That makes sense.
If you don't feel truly rooted in a place, it's easier to pick up and leave, right?
Precisely.
And that's what Daiwa Steel is trying to address,
They're providing practical support like airport pickups and help with housing.
which can be a huge hurdle for newcomers, especially families,
Those little things can make a world of difference when you're trying to navigate a new culture.
especially with a family in tow.
But it sounds like it's about more than just logistics.
You're right.
It's about fostering a sense of belonging.
Daiwa also offers job rotation programs, giving their employees, both Japanese and foreign, the opportunity to experience different aspects of the business.
I see.
So it's about career development, but also about breaking down silos and encouraging interaction between employees from different backgrounds.
That's brilliant.
The article even highlights the story of Tran Vinh Trung, a Vietnamese employee who moved to Japan to work for Daiwa.
He brought his family over, and his son is now thriving in school, even aiming to study medicine at the prestigious University of Tokyo.
Wow, the University of Tokyo.
That speaks volumes about how settled and optimistic they must feel about their future in Japan.
It does, doesn't it?
It suggests that they see Japan as a place where they can build a life, not just have a job.
Of course, the article doesn't shy away from the challenges.
Mr. Trung's wife, while she's found work, admits to missing aspects of Vietnamese life.
That's understandable.
It's a huge adjustment, and everyone adapts at their own pace.
It's a good reminder that there are always human stories behind these larger economic trends. It's about navigating cultural differences, managing expectations, and finding a balance between preserving one's heritage and embracing new opportunities.
So we're seeing these companies, Hizatsuki Confectionery and Daiwa Steel, taking these innovative steps.
But are their efforts a sign of things to come in Japan? Or are they the exception rather than the rule? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Are these companies trailblazers?
Or are they outliers in a country that's been famously hesitant to embrace immigration?
What are your thoughts on that?
Such a pivotal moment for Japan.
On one hand, these companies are taking risks, challenging long-held cultural norms.
But on the other hand, they're facing an existential threat.
They need workers.
And they're realizing that the old ways of doing things might not cut it anymore.
It's almost like necessity is becoming the mother of cultural invention, right?
I think that's a great way to put it.
And it's not just happening in a vacuum.
The government has been gradually easing immigration policies, recognizing the need for foreign workers to sustain economic growth.
So it's like a two-way street.
Companies are adapting, and the government is responding to the changing realities on the ground.
Exactly.
The question is, will these efforts be enough to attract?
And, more importantly, retain foreign workers in the long run.
Japan is competing with other countries that have been more open to immigration.
Countries with more established support systems for newcomers.
It makes you wonder what else could be done right.
Beyond language classes and airport pickups?
What would it take for Japan to become a truly attractive destination for foreign workers?
A place where they could envision building a future, not just having a job.
That's the crux of the issue, isn't it?
It goes beyond just economic incentive.
It's about creating a society that's welcoming and inclusive.
Where cultural differences are valued, not just tolerated.
It's a long-term project.
A societal shift that goes way beyond just changing a few policies.
It makes you think about the bigger picture.
What does this all mean for other countries facing similar demographic challenges?
Could Japan's experience serve as a cautionary tale?
Or a source of inspiration?
It's a reminder that demographics are destiny, as they say.
Countries with shrinking and aging populations will need to find ways to attract and retain talent from all over the world.
And that requires more than just opening borders.
It requires opening minds.
It's about recognizing that diversity isn't just a feel-good buzzword.
It's an economic imperative, a social necessity.
And ultimately a source of resilience and innovation in an ever-changing world.
I couldn't agree more.
And that brings us back to our listener.
If you were in charge of shaping Japan's future, what's one concrete step you would take to make the country more welcoming to foreign workers and their families?
What would it take for you to feel at home in a new culture?
That's something to ponder.
A perfect note to end on.
This deep dive has certainly given us all a lot to think about.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning.